So, with the technical issues aside that I was running into, granted, probably is really my own fault that those happened. We are back with more Esper Make You Live Again. Hopefully without issues ever again, but who knows? We'll see if I fucked up again or not. Hopefully the save actually saves this time instead of just being cached as a save. But the next morning, when I woke up, I was in great shape, and for good reason. It was already noon. I had slept nearly 12 hours. I did not have time. Okay. So I mean that's the thing. My message has been sent off the story. Wasn't expecting to run one into one the first sentence of continuing this game. Did not have time to hang around. I had to continue my investigation for the exam. That was unexpected. Just before leaving, I remembered one thing. Maybe Brad has already answered my message. Let's see. Turn on the computer. There was one message more than yesterday. It had to be it. I was hoping Brett had some good news for me. Did not want to go back to work with confused thoughts. I was going to be running in circles if I tried to follow two leads at the same time. I almost forgot about it. If I had gone out with consulting Brett's messages, what track would I have followed? Sat in my chair and opened Brett's last message, the one that probably contained answers to my questions. From Blondie Boy, first ideas. Happy to hear a few more. Suspected that you were having some trouble. Guess you have not read my other post yet, but no need to be so formal and invasive. Server is normally perfectly secure, at least I hope so. I would have preferred to hear good news from you, but I'm just as happy to help you with what seems like a problem. I've read your message several times, and I have already had the opportunity to do some research, but I cannot yet give you a clear and definitive answer. It would take me more time. Need more time because, just like you, I find the situation abnormal, if not more. First point concerns this dream in which you saw memories. Like you, I have never heard of anything like this before, but before I can say that it is entirely abnormal. Oh, I love typos. I can put forward a theory that could justify what happened. Manifestation of your powers in the form of a dream is not so strange in itself. Do not forget, your powers are still unstable. Your body may take a while to assimilate these new abilities. To corroborate this point, I refer to you the second vision you told me about. This time the person was there, and the memories came out the same way, even if you don't remember what you saw. Maybe your way of seeing people's thoughts, at least for the moment. Might be quite unusual, but not impossible. I'll have to do more research into this. However, what is strange is, so you have already fully understood the fact that these memories, in regards to the first case, appeared to you much later. I have an idea about that. About it. That night, you might not have seen her memories, but you could have been seeing them again? During the moment when you felt a bond being created, you probably saw these memories without understanding them. In this case, it's not impossible that you thought about them later and understood them better. Everything was done unconsciously thanks to your powers, but it's a possibility that holds up. This is, of course, only an idea. I will have to do more research, but for the moment, I advise you to not worry too much about that, especially since it is far from being the most important of your worries. The real problem, and if you were not mistaken, is not only the second manifestation of your powers. Even unstable, they should not have reacted in a similar way to someone else. It's the Academy that advocates this concept: one exam, one target, not two. The examination of an Esper is serious, very serious. This happened yesterday. You should have already been warned of the emergence of an unexpected event. You heard me right, R. It's perhaps not a coincidence that something happened. You may have escaped the Academy for some still unknown but already disturbing reason. This is a completely new situation. I don't really have an answer to give you at the moment. My best advice would be to follow the trail that gives you the best results so far. I will try to find out more about what you explained to me. If you have something new, tell me quickly. I doubt I will find books about mistakes the Academy made, so I don't know where to start. Fair enough. There is also a slight chance that I am wrong. Your powers may have simply been derailed. You didn't see anything during your second vision. It may be that there was simply nothing to see. But honestly, I would not count on that. Even if you did not see anything, your powers reacted, and it should have been detected by the examiner. Speaking of her, I saw her leave the academy yesterday late afternoon. Sent you a message about it, maybe you already read it. Do not think it's related to what you were telling me. We'd have been warned if that was the case, but since she's not supposed to leave the academy for the duration of your exam, I thought you might like to be kept informed. That's why I thought you were having problems. I thought she was hurrying off to tell you about the problem. But since you haven't heard from her yet, this theory falls flat. So I have no idea why she left in such a hurry. She should normally stay at the academy to keep the principal and the teachers informed of any problem as soon as possible so that they can make a decision together, if necessary. That's all I can tell you right now. Be careful, something is going on, so let's do our best to find out what it is. Signed, Blondie Boy. Yes, by the way, R, do not forget this important thing we learned. You must always get to the bottom of things. Scratching the surface is not always enough. I was not imagining things, at least not entirely. Something strange was going on. If Brett thought that was the case, without a doubt, I was justified in thinking the same thing. Since I had no idea who the girl I saw in the park was, I decided to focus on Ayano. Ayano? Braid? Why did you forget how to say his name? Brett was right, and my power's reaction to her was normal. Then it was this lead that made the most sense. But what still worried me was that he did not really know what to think of the second manifestation of my powers, let alone the vision that followed. Or at least it was the fact that he spontaneously attributed this to something that was perhaps beyond the control of the academy, and his first intuition was often the good one. I had already realized that I would have to be very careful. Since I had a little more time before I had to go to the park to find Hayano, I took the opportunity to read the rest of Brett's messages. Thought this should not take too long. I had been gone for 3 days only. From Blondie Boy, how's the move? Hello my friends, how did the move go? Everything went well? I know it's a little early to send you a message, you may not even have arrived in your new home yet, but I was a bit bored. Must say everybody is still in shock at your departure. It was really sudden. We lived together for years, you know. But do not worry, everyone here is holding strong and we are all thinking about you. I'll try to keep you informed of what is happening at the academy. If ever you connect to the server, you will have some good stories to read. Don't worry about security, I worked on it all day. It has become almost impossible to track connections to the server. Don't worry too much about a username, Rio will do just fine. Of course, Brett was mocking me, I had no way of knowing that before. It was obvious that he had deliberately forgotten to talk to me about it the day before I left. So he needed a username to connect. I could not have read him his messages without one. But I could have at least changed the tone of my message. I had to deal with it, but finally I was quite satisfied with my choice and downplayed the situation a little. It was a good thing I read this message. I did not think I would feel like this, but I think it reassured me to know that everything was fine for them, that my life at the academy was not so far away, and that it was not just a memory. It was a weight off my chest. I felt relieved. Let's see the rest. From Blondie Boy, game night with Wallace. Despite your departure, we decided to keep our good habits. Last night we had a Game Station 6 party in Wallace's room, the first without you and yours, unfortunately. It allowed me to finally win the tournament on King of Badass 2, but the atmosphere was still a bit heavy, sad even. We ended the evening by going out to the dormitory park to think about something else. Finally got used to the idea that you were no longer here, but that it was only temporary. Nobody here thinks that we won't see you again, and now we are looking forward to your return. You will come back, Rio, promise? I put on the dormitory. I was glad to hear that Brett was moving on. It was sort of his exam, dealing with the separation. At least for some time, while trying to stay the same person he had always been. He'd understood very well. These messages were mostly a way to reassure me. I knew it, felt it. I knew Brett better than anyone. He did not want me to worry about him. He wanted me to be fully focused on my exam. One thing was certain. There were no two like him. I myself lucky to have come across such a great friends there at the academy. There was one message left, probably about Miss Urabayashi. From Blondie Boy, the examiner is already gone. During the evening, I saw your examiner, Miss Hirabayashi, if I recall her name correctly, trying to leave the academy discreetly, away from the students' eyes, but especially those of the principal. She seemed worried, almost panicked, to the point of rapidly forgetting to hide. She took her car, hit a post while backing up, and headed for the exit. That was nothing to be worried about, but she should normally be staying at the academy for the duration of your exam to warn the principal as soon as possible in case of a problem. I want to think that everything is fine for you, especially since she seemed to want to leave quietly, but it was so unexpected that I cannot help thinking that something has happened. Let me know if you ever read this message. Maybe I could help you. Based on what Bright explained to me in his answer, I understood that all that had happened the night before. I decided not to worry too much. If it was me she wanted to see, she would have been in my living room already. She very well could be right this second, Rio. You haven't been downstairs since you've woken up. Furthermore, Miss Hirabayashi probably had her own private life too. It must certainly be things she had to hide, even from the principal. However, it was hard for me to imagine her running off secretly to meet a man or something similar. This idea made me crack a smile and motivated me. Holy crap, I never actually noticed that smile crack. The hell? That looks a bit odd to me. But okay. It was now time to set out. Ayano must have arrived at the park. I had to tell her that I had found nothing, unfortunately. And we're at the park. When I arrived at the park, I did not see anyone. It's not particularly late, but Ayano was not there, at least not where I'd met her the first two times. After a few glances, I decided to take a little walk to see if she was not simply a bit further. Like over by the graveyard? Nope. No trace of her. She's not here yet, or perhaps she's already gone. Sat on a bench to take stock of the situation. It's true that I had not really made visible progress. She was probably not waiting impatiently for my dues. For me, however, things had changed a lot and had become a bit complicated, with the erection of male powers and this vision of her memories, not to mention the girl I met at the park. But I understood that from her point of view, all this might seem to not be going anywhere. I even thought maybe she was investigating on her own now. I was hoping, however, that she had not thought it was ultimately useless to count on me, so it had made my situation a bit difficult. I did not really know how I could contact her. I knew her name, but I might have had to visit all the Fujikawas in the city to hope to find her. That was not the ideal solution. Then, we hardly knew each other. It might have been confusing if I had decided to show up at her home without warning. I really did not want to find myself in the middle of a misunderstanding that would have had her distance herself from me. I was trying to do the opposite. I wanted her to rely on me. To trust me, it was the only real way to help her. Fly? Where the hell? Damn flies. Damn summer. Maybe I was just imagining things. But maybe. My bad. Whatever. Took the time to think, and finally I thought she might simply have had something else to do. There were a plethora of reasons why she could be absent. After all, it was only a cat. She probably had other things to do that could take time. Well, I would have liked that to be it, but I knew that the reality of it was totally different. It was difficult for me to admit it, but if she was not here, it was probably my fault. If I had done what was necessary earlier, if I had made her understand that she needed me and that she could count on me, she would have been here. Felt like I had tried, I really thought so, but I still could not master my powers enough. Could not control them. But it was not just that. There must have been something else. With all that had happened so far, it could not be a coincidence. There was too much confusion in my head. I could not put two and two together. I decided to walk a little longer to help me think. I knew the problem came from me and my powers, but was that the other problem? What if I was more mistaken than I thought? I had everything wrong concerning the use and control of my powers, but maybe that was not all. I had a lot of questions. What if she was not the right person? Was I supposed to help the other girl? My mind was full of uncertainties. I had more and more doubts. I had, however, felt a bond being created between Ayano and I even saw her memories. I brushed that idea aside. She really needed me. I did not have any doubts about it. It was her that I needed to help. I could not put all the blame on her either. Even though she thought that she did not need help, even though she did not trust me enough yet, all that was my job. It was up to me to do the right thing to make her feel like that. I did not have any possibilities left. Her story was one of them. It was the first and only thing that came to my mind at that time. I began to think about everything. Everything! She had explained to me. I thought maybe she did not really care about that cat, or maybe she had already found it, which would explain why she was absent. It would. Very much would. I was still going around in circles. My thoughts were still not clear. I had already thought about all that. Something was wrong. It was almost too easy. I had already I had already wondered what would happen if she found this animal, and this answer seemed illogical. Suddenly, the solution appeared before my eyes. It was so simple. It was obvious that the Academy would never have sent me to solve a case that did not require my abilities. I was passing my exam. I was not there just to observe and intervene in case things went wrong. There remained only one solution. She did not need help with this cat story, but with something else. The story could not be solved. The story could be solved so easily without me. It was because it was not the one I had to deal with, but that took me a moment to understand. Red had told me in his message that it was necessary to get to the bottom of things, that scratching the surface was not enough and would not suffice. He had once again saved the day. Good old Brett saving the day. Forever and ever. But for my part, I had simply accepted her story and I was trying to solve it logically. Almost too much. I almost forgot that I was an Esper. I had totally forgotten to learn more about her. About her problems, I had only focused on what she had wanted to tell me. It did not seem obvious to me at the time. Not because of the lack of experience, but people who are suffering have a hard time talking about how they actually feel. It could not be so simple. Finally, I understood that a deeper pain must exist, like a scar that would not close, and that amplified all other problems. I had tackled the wrong problem, a problem that did not require the intervention of an Esper. Everything was explained. I thought for a moment that she could not be the one I needed help, but I quickly dismissed that possibility. Everything seemed to indicate that she needed me. The pain buried deep within her resurfaced for a few moments during our discussion. It was then that I felt the bond being created. It was irrefutable proof that she needed help. It took me a few seconds to remember that moment, or at least that part of the discussion. She had vaguely told me about her family and her night anxiety. Rain, work with me here. I did not remember anything more. I began to think about this. I thought she might have a problem with a fear of something, a fear that would ruin her life. Recent event, or something in her past that she could not forget? It was still hard to say. If it was recent, the only solution was that she would tell me about it, but if it was something older and more shocking, then I saw a potential alternative. Perhaps an event that the newspapers might have mentioned. And I knew exactly where I could find the archives, at the library. That was it. I tried to find out about her and her family from the local newspaper archives. Since she was not here, I decided to start with that. It was still better than doing nothing, and I really believed in this idea. Besides, even if I found nothing, I eliminated at least one possibility, so I was not going to waste my time, whatever the result. Is she allowed to take a book out of the library and read it on a bench? I presume she took a book out of the library. She allowed to do that? Yeah, allowed. So is she waiting for a bus or something? Because, I mean, the bus stop's over there. Like, she's just on a bench next to the street right now. Reading a book. Why? Why? Why is she there? I want to know. I had already located the library on my first day in Naraha. Just a few steps from downtown. I knew where to go, but the walk from the park was relatively long. When I arrived, I noticed with astonishment the presence of a bus stop. It had gone unnoticed to me when I first went down that street, and using public transit would have saved me some valuable time. What was done was done. I could not go back. I crossed the street and approached the imposing building, an old museum that became too narrow and was converted into a library a few years before my arrival. Could not see much through the windows. Blinds were drawn probably to maintain some form of calm and privacy for those inside. However, this atmosphere did not seem to be everyone's liking. Sitting on the benches in front of the building were several people reading, perhaps enjoy the good weather. Oh. Oh, the text actually explains that. Oh. Oh. I had forgotten that small detail. After contemplating the place for a few more moments, I decided to enter. She's staring. A profound calm, barely disturbed by the noise of the doors at my entrance, reigned inside the library. Everyone respected this intimacy, and the slightest unexpected noise attracted the curious and sometimes furious eyes of the regulars. At the entrance, the counter was managed by a librarian who handled the computer with an almost disconcerting ease. It was a mandatory point of passage for any information request. At the far end of the hall, the door led to what appeared to be another part of the library or a reserve. And judging by the almost flawless condition of the floor in front of the door, it was probably very rarely accessed. Hello, and welcome to the Naraha. I don't... Do I have an old lady voice? Can I think of one? Brain, you work with me on this, along with body and voice. No, I don't think I have one. No. Unfortunately, I don't think I do. Hello, and welcome to the... Wait, maybe. Hello, and welcome to the... No, I just don't. Hello, and welcome to the Naraha Municipal Library. I don't think I've seen you before. Don't hesitate to come see me if you want a library card. Only those who have a card can borrow books. It is free for residents of Naraha. I had hardly taken a step into the library before this lady was already reciting her welcoming speech. I was a little surprised that she spoke to me so quickly. Me? Another time, maybe. I came here to find out if you kept a newspaper archive that I could consult. Archives? Yes, of course. We have been keeping excerpts from local newspapers for about 20 years, regarding events that took place in the city or that involved some of our citizens. We also keep newspapers and articles about major events of the country, of course. It is, however, impossible to borrow the archives. You have to consult them on the spot. Looking for something in particular? The librarian approached her computer. Archives are sorted by date, event, and name. I can easily find what you were looking for if you can provide me with these, or at least one of them. Found it a little embarrassing to have to admit that I was researching a particular person. Thought she might have misunderstood my intentions, but I had no choice and I had to start somewhere. Would like to know more about the Fujikawa family. Oh, Fujikawa? She seemed almost surprised to see me pronounce that name, but it was not just that. She had heard it before, I was sure of it. You seem to know these people, am I wrong? Well, yes. Those are old memories. Mr. and Mrs. Fujikawa work at Naraha Hospital. They took care of my husband when he was hospitalized. Mainly Kyoko. She's a wonderful caregiver. They are famous and appreciated people in the city. Almost everyone knows them, and all those who do are very laudatory about them. The archives about this family will be numerous. Could you perhaps be more specific about what you were looking for? A day maybe, or an event in particular? I am looking for information about Yano Fujikawa. Should be part of the family that you just talked about? Yano? Yes, she's their daughter. A wonderful girl, if you want my opinion. She and her sister sometimes accompanied by their mother when she came to take care of my husband at home. They were bringing a little bit of craziness with them. I'm convinced that it's thanks to them that my husband got better. That's what I find out about Yano Fujikawa. Yes. Okay. Here, you will find the archive about Yano Fujikawa in the East Wing of the library. Access is not normally allowed. I will open the door for you. The librarian invited me to follow her to the door I had already noticed in the back of the hall. The archives all start with the AYFU code, followed by a number. You shouldn't have too much trouble finding them. They are arranged in alphabetical order. Remember to put the archives back where you found them once you have finished. If you'll excuse me, I can't help you anymore. I have to stay at the reception desk. There is no one to replace me. The librarian left. I entered the annex. Damn you, nose itching. Stop itching. The annex where the archives were stored resembled above all a warehouse where everything that had no place in the main room was placed. The room did not seem to have been renovated, nor did it appear to be regularly maintained, as the dust layer on the piles of documents waiting to be sorted out proved. The lamps were no longer working, and only sunlight lit the place, giving it an intimidating appearance. But despite all this, it was relatively easy to find what you were looking for, as the important documents were perfectly stored and listed. I was a little surprised, despite the fact that I came here for this reason, to learn that there was an archive on Ayano. Not everyone has articles about them in newspapers. You need a good reason to see your name mentioned in the press. Was she famous, or maybe she had done something impressive or important? That was far from reality. So let's see. AYFU? Ah, it's here. It's more than I thought. Articles were listed in chronological order. I sat down and began to read them in order to be certain not to miss anything, and especially not to unsort anything. Good idea. Let's not be rude to the library. March 17th, 1998. Famous surgeon Masato Fujikawa has just become a father. 4 years after the marriage, he and his wife gave birth to Ayano, a baby in great shape and already full of life. The Fujikawa family is still growing. 3 years after their first happy event, it is little Natsuko who will be happy. She now has a sister with whom to occupy her days. I can read. Masato said he was very proud, but did not want to take time off as he had done for Natsuko. The patients will be relieved. These events took place about 16 years ago. Natsuko seemed to be the sister Ayano had told me about. Did the math and figured out that she must be 19 years old, which I thought was relatively young to leave her family's home. All this did not really help me. I resumed reading of the documents. April 11, 2006. Ayano Fujikawa, the daughter of the famous surgeon of the same name, obtained perfect results of her tests of aptitude in logic, spelling, and mathematics carried out last week. At the national level, only 2 other students of this age have achieved this feat. This is a great pride for her and her family, but also all of Naraha's teaching staff. In order not to slow down her progress and to promote the development of her abilities, her parents instantly suggested to have her skip a grade. This was unfortunately refused by the school, which felt that the girl needed to continue to flourish in the current setting along with her friends, and that this possibility could be reconsidered in a few years. Following this refusal, the Fujikawa family, ignoring the advice of educators, immediately decided to place Ayano in a special school for the gifted, claiming that they knew better than anyone what was right for their daughter. The little genius world changed in less than 48 hours, but seems at the time of writing this article to appreciate her life. Her new life. I was surprised to learn that Ayano was a child prodigy. That was not really the feeling she gave me in the first place. Given her current state, I knew that I should not trust appearances. This seemed to explain her availability during the day. Imagine that her abilities probably allowed her to comprehend more things much faster than others, giving her more free time. Teenagers of her age were in school. Special schools had to have a different rhythm, adapted to the abilities of each student. This information was valuable, but it did not really help me. Nothing seemed to explain why she was feeling so bad. Pick the following article. October 19, 2009, so a little over 3 years later. While visiting her sister's school to encourage her at the sports festival, Ayano Fujikawa steals the spotlight from other students despite herself. Interviewed by the high school journalism club covering the event, she says she no longer feels comfortable in her current school. She was feeling isolated and not having fun, and regrets that she was unable to participate in any sports festivals because her specialized school did not organize any due to the small number of students. Her former classmates felt how she was affected by the situation, especially when her sister refused to speak to her. They explained that a form of jealousy had settled in Natsuko's mind vis-a-vis her sister. Yano declined to comment on her relationship with her sister, stating that all of this was private. I began to understand. Her life must have been difficult since that day. Between her new setting she no longer seemed to appreciate, and a sister who had drifted away from her by jealousy. And a damn fly buzzing around Rio's head. Being annoying. In her situation, losing what could have been only her only friend, even if it was a cat, was enough to feel bad and isolated again. Her real pain was perhaps related to that, to the relationship she had with her older sister. Decided to focus on the articles about her and her sister. No, not that. Still no. Ah, here's another one. Give it a picture of Natsuko. Well, I think it's of her. February 7, 2013. Previous one was what, 2009? Yeah, I think so. Following recent events, Ayano Fujikawa decides to leave school and temporarily stop studying. Discreet and not very talkative, she briefly admitted to feeling responsible for the cause of Ayano's problems was there before my eyes. I felt stupid, I who was just looking for a cat. She told me what her problem was, but I did not understand. I could not read between the lines. Also, music, what the hell happened to you? I had not understood the effect it took for her to talk about this. Everything had become clear as day. My older sister is no longer here. She had told me. Remembered it well. Did not understand the meaning of those words until then. My older sister is gone, and gone forever, fortunately. As in reading the document, my stomach nodded by what I had just understood. The feeling responsible for the death of her sister Natsuko, who had died a few days earlier of a fall while she was perched on the branch of a tree 4 meters above the ground. Many people around her have tried to make her go back on her decision, but the Yo seemed depressed to the point of not wanting to do anything with her life. Her parents, who were obviously very affected, also spoke with her, but her decision has not changed. Ayato Fujikawa, the prodigal pupil of Naraha, eventually leaves school and any form of education until further notice. And given her condition, she is unfortunately not ready to reconsider her decision. This event had taken place 2 years before my arrival, give or take a few days. It was this pain that made her life unbearable, and was totally understandable, by the way. How could I have started on such another insignificant track? I was shocked. Shocked about what I had just learned. But also to understand that I had been wrong all this time, and that I was mistaken about everything. I felt so stupid. Stupider than ever. But I had to take this in stride, and quickly. Now I had to understand why she was only now in this state, if this tragic event was the cause of his misery. It could and should have manifested itself earlier. Shouldn't it be her misery? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be referring to, yeah, no. It was inconceivable that she could have kept that to herself for so long. This immense sadness should have manifested itself months before my arrival. I was on the right track, I felt it, but I had missed a piece of the puzzle. Thought there might be an archive about her sister Natsuko. I had to ask the librarian. The librarian spoke to me before I even got to her. She almost seemed to be waiting for my return. Oops. So, young man, did you find what you were looking for? Can I close the archive room? Found some answers, yes, but it was not exactly what I expected. I still needed to know more. I'd like to know more about Yano's sister, Natsuko. Do you know if there were some documents about her? Tell me, young man, what drives you to delve into Yano's past and that of the Fujikawa family in general? The archives are, of course, public, but you were not related to them, am I wrong? I knew that my behavior would become suspicious at one point or another. But I could not really justify myself. I had to stay very vague. Well, can't really talk about it, but I'm trying to help Yano, who is going through a rough patch now. Rough patch. See, it's been almost 2 years now. So I have good relations with the Fujikawa family, you know. Good enough to know better than anyone the details of certain events related to them. If you really want to help Yano, there are some things you need to know and you won't learn anywhere else. I was surprised to see the ease with which she had accepted my elusive explanation, and even more to see her offer me her help. Everything is clear now, but I did not feel anything back then. Okay. Meet me in the Naraha cemetery in half an hour. Needed to get some fresh air right away. I will ask my assistant to replace me. But I thought there was no one here to replace you. That's why you had to stay out here. Or did your assistant come while I was in there? The situation was becoming really, really serious, and I thought to help her by finding her cat. I was way off. The pain she felt was much deeper, and I felt like this was not the last surprise. But the missing piece of the puzzle was about to be unveiled. I hoped that the librarian would be able to help me understand the situation as a whole. I also had to think about asking her if she knew anything about Ayano's cat. It might be one of the things needed to solve this problem. I started quietly towards the cemetery, which I had already seen at the back of the park. To the cemetery! I had just crossed the park looking around with me, hoping to find Ayano's track, but she was still not there. I did not know what to think of that. But it was not the time to get distracted from my goal. I had another more important thing to think about. I found myself in the middle of an area isolated by large walls, at the center of a large avenue lined with tombstones. The chirping of the birds seemed to have stopped as if to respect the intimacy of the place. The librarian was already waiting for me, although it was a little early. She seemed lost in thought. I approached her. Sorry, did I make you wait? No, don't worry, I just arrived, and I too am a little early. This place reminds me of a, wait, Fred? This place reminds me a lot of people I knew. It is always odd for me when I come here, but you're not here to listen to an old woman's ramblings. Felt a little sad for her. Did not know if it was just a feeling or something deeper, but this place seemed to have brought back old memories of people that she would have, without a doubt, wanted to still be part of this world. You must be wondering what pushed an old lady whose name you don't even know to give you an appointment here. And that's alright, I myself am not sure what made me want to help you. But that's not the point. I will start by introducing myself. My name is Masaki Yoshida. As you already know, I am a friend of the Fujikawa family. The word friend may be a bit outdated by now, but I have an excellent relationship with them, and that was even truer several years ago. I understand that you want to help Ayano and to know more about her sister Natsuko, is that it? Wait. What, that... Okay. Yeah. I think that the sorrow Ayano is currently feeling is related to the death of her sister, and I would like to know more in order to help her. I can't really tell you why I'm doing all this, but I sincerely hope I can do something for her. I see. Don't really need to know your motives, it's you who came to find me to know more, so I have no reason to doubt your goodwill. If I understood the situation well, you want to know more about the circumstances of Natsuko's death so that you can understand why Ayano is feeling so bad, right? That's alright. Very well, you have probably already understood. It happened about 2 years ago, give or take a few days. If you want to know in detail, it will be exactly 2 years and 9 days. Although I cannot say with certainty, it is very likely that this is the cause of her current unease you told me about. Ayano seemed to be getting better for several months now, but for some reason most probably related to this incident, she seems to have relapsed, at least according to you. It must be said that this tragic event has turned her life as well as that of many others upside down, and has completely changed her. Though in appearance she may seem fulfilled, her reality is quite different, but you know that already. What the archives do not mention, what only a few people know, is the events that led to this tragic accident. For many, the consequences are enough. Natsuko's death under the eyes of his sister has left a scar that will probably never heal. Ayano was with her sister that day. She would never be able to part with these images that are now anchored in her mind forever. It was a shock to hear that. I had not considered the story from this even more dramatic angle. Finally understood that Ayano had to live with this tragic story weighing on her heart, but also with these images in her mind. A traumatism of which she has clearly not yet recovered. It's understandable, but she is sadly even more stricken than because she considers herself as a person responsible for this tragedy. There is some truth in what she thinks. She indeed played a very important role in the story, but it is also, and above all, very simplified and erroneous version of events that have spread over a little more than 7 years. Most people are content with this version of the facts, but can't consider Ayano responsible because deep down they don't know the whole story. Even Ayano's parents, who were at the center of this disaster, have trouble accepting the truth behind this incident and avoid talking about it as much as possible. Few know the truth behind this drama. Ayano told me the whole story several months ago. She came to me and I felt that listening to her would help. That's why I know exactly what happened. But it's my proximity to the Fujikawa family and the memories that I share with them that allow me to see the big picture and understand that Ayano was mistaken about her involvement in this tragedy. If I had only listened to her, I would probably have thought her guilty. To fully understand the position and role of each person in the drama, one must first understand the relationship that existed between Natsuko and Ayano. Miss Yoshida went down the main alley, making me understand that I should accompany her. Let's go back more than 10 years. There were two sisters whom nothing seemed to be able to separate. Natsuko and Ayano were really close to each other and shared everything, or almost everything. They spent most of their time playing together, inventing futures where they were always both happy. They were sisters, best friends, but also unique friends. I had seen this past in Ayano's memories, a girl with her in the park. It was them when they were younger. They were young, carefree, and could not imagine ever being separated or needing to rely on other people. They had no reason to think that. Everything was going well for them, and they were still too young to imagine what their lives were going to be like. But one day, Ayano's intellectual abilities were brought to light. Child prodigy had just revealed itself, the pride of the city, but especially of the Fujikawa family. But all were not proud, unfortunately. This event in itself might not have changed anything, but the arrogance of the parents, too proud of their daughter, was going to change everything. Ayano couldn't be held responsible for her abilities, that gift she had. She didn't choose to be like that. Fully understood the situation. It was not because of my powers. I'd experienced something similar myself. I too had a difficult time because of my abilities. The attention both parents began to show more and more to Ayano, involuntarily of course, but unfortunately quite visible for Natsuko. And with Ayano's induction into a specialized school a few days after the discovery of her abilities, the two sisters were for the first time separated for a long period. Unlike Natsuko, for whom the separation was extremely difficult, Ayano seemed to be okay during her first weeks without her sister in her new school, but all that was only appearances. Those sisters were taking this very hard. I'd say very hard, right? Yeah. It was even more difficult for Natsuko, who, besides having to bear with her anguish by herself, had to live in the shadow of her sister. At least, that's what she believed. That's what her parents' behavior made her believe. Probably Ayano's curiosity for what she discovered day after day that misled everyone. It was not her fault. Of course, she was young and had discovered a world adapted to her abilities. She did not mean harm to anyone. For everyone else, she seemed like she was blossoming. Unfortunately, it was all an illusion. Deep inside her, Natsuko's absence was beginning to take hold, and that feeling would not stop growing. But she did not dare to talk about it. Perhaps if, from her early days in her school, she had shown signs of her weakness, her parents would have reflected once more on the situation, but this took a while to manifest. A little too much time. It was just something she felt, and that's why she didn't dare to talk about it anymore. During this period when Ayano was attending her specialized classes, the two sisters only saw each other over the holidays. Ayano lived in a boarding school several miles away from home. Brian, why did you add a word? And because of their work, her parents had little to no time to visit her. Natsuko was still too young to be allowed to go alone and was therefore dependent on her parents' availability. The two sisters couldn't see each other regularly. The first months, they both seemed to live only for this moment. It was their reward. They had in mind only that moment when they would be together for a few days. This distance even gave them the feeling of strengthening their relationship. It was impossible to separate them whenever they met, even for only a few minutes. They did everything together, absolutely everything. But over the months and years, paradoxically, something began to change in Natsuko. She, who seemed to be the most affected by all these changes and by the situation, was the first to raise her head. Maybe it was just normal change for her, who was the oldest and was becoming a teenager. You will never know. Still, she began to make other close friends, and Ayano's privileged place in her heart began to fade. Then, with the adolescence, her first love appeared. She finally broke away from her sister, but Ayano, on her side, sank more and more into depression. She didn't get along with the other children in her school. She was isolated. She was fighting for herself and found hope in thinking about Natsuko and their reunion. But this feeling was less and less reciprocal. Natsuko began to really appreciate and consider life without her sister constantly at her side, but that was not all. Another feeling was beginning to invade her, or maybe she started to be able to live without her sister because of that feeling. That feeling was jealousy, a small seed of jealousy that had planted itself in her mind and would never stop growing, changing her forever. She felt sidelined by her family. She imagined that there was only room for her sister and that she no longer meant anything to her family. She felt unwanted in her parents' eyes. Of course, she was wrong, at least in large part, but the damage was done. This feeling would never leave her again. Things were never the same since that day. Miss Yoshida stopped and turned towards me to continue talking. Although unable to voluntarily be mean and bad with her sister, Natsuko became more distant from Ayano, not giving her as much time and attention. While Ayano always asked for more, this distance damaged Ayano greatly. The more Natsuko distanced herself, the more Ayano isolated herself. She no longer understood her sister's feelings. She thought she had hurt her or betrayed her by leaving. She took all the blame for her and burdened herself even more. Saki, can you stop talking for like, I don't know, 5 minutes so I can get my voice like a rest with with this like falsetto type voice that I do for female voices? Ugh. Maybe I should have. I don't know, attempted harder to be staying in show choir or something. To help with the whole music aspect and be able to train my throat for this kind of voice activity. Especially in the falsetto type style. Both parents, busy with their work, were unable to support their daughters during this time. They were not very present, and what little time they could spare when everyone was together seemed devoted, in Natsuko's eyes, to Ayano. It was this situation in part that gave rise to Natsuko's jealousy. Whenever Ayano was not there, Natsuko had to fend for herself. They had been accustomed to being self-sufficient and watching over each other. Neither of them seemed to suffer from a lack of affection or attention at that time, but with Ayano's departure, things had changed. Ayano was at the center of discussions whether she was present or not. The situation became unbearable for Natsuko. Masato and Kyoko arranged for free time when the whole family was together, which Natsuko interpreted negatively. Seeing her parents do so much for her sister and so little for her hurt her deeply. She did not understand that her parents were doing this for her as well, so that they could all be together, but she could not understand it. Ayano garnered all the attention. She was a part of the family. She was at the center of all the discussions. Neither parents realized their mistakes before it was too late. They had no bad intentions. They loved their two children just as much, but their bad way of expressing it in this difficult context ended up causing the loss of one of their daughters. Miss Yoshida turned her head to one of the graves before which we had stopped. This is where Natsuko rests now. These flowers were once at the foot of the tree from which she fell. She loved them. It was Ayano who insisted that they be brought here. 1995 to 2013, Natsuko Fujikawa, taken by her feelings for her sister. Miss Yoshida remained silent for several seconds. You needn't be a mind reader and saying that her proximity to Ayano's family had made the retelling of the story more difficult. Finally, she continued speaking. Before telling you the end of this tragic story, I would like to ask you one thing. You know what all these origami scattered around the grave are? Yes, I do. They were cranes, but that's all I could say. It was obvious that this was not the subject of Miss Yoshida's question. I remained silent. It was actually, it's actually something I learned before this game. Granted, I guess we'll come to it anyway. Yeah. Literally the next line. Explains the whole thing. Legend has it that one who folds 1,000 paper cranes, those origami that you can see here, in 1 year can see one of his wishes fulfilled. All of this is obviously only a belief, and this legend does not speak about bringing back those who have left forever. It concerns more common wishes such as happiness or health. But Ayano, while she was still a child, had heard of this legend. She had, however, heard it with her child's ears and had retained only the magic that emanated from it. Unfortunately, and because of her condition preventing her from reacting rationally, Ayano decided to realize her wish to see her sister return by decorating her grave with 1,000 paper cranes. Nobody had the courage to dissuade her or to bring her back to reason. Ayano needed to believe in something to help her, little by little, to accept the reality. She laid down almost 200 of them before she began to understand that it would not change anything. And before, unfortunately, to move to something else, to turn away once more from a reality she could not accept. Most of Ayano's original origamis have not survived the weather and time, but her parents have come in and placed more regularly out of respect for what their daughter had done before. What Ayano planned to do touched them as if it still touches me today, and this gesture alone is enough to understand that all that Ayano does is guided by her feelings for Natsuko and by the immense sadness and the guilt that has haunted her for 2 years now. It became 2 years. On the topic, tears. 2 years ago, Natsuko decided to spend a day with her sister, something she almost did not do anymore and had not done in the previous 3 months. Ayano was delighted, and the two sisters returned to the park where they had spent the better years of their lives. But Natsuko's approach was thoughtful, although totally stupid. She had something in mind, something she had been preparing for weeks, something that had gnawed at her mind to the point of making her lose all sense of responsibility. After all these years, her behavior had changed. She no longer saw her sister in the same way. She was even ready to hurt her, or at least to make her pay for the last years of suffering. For her, Ayano was the main person responsible for all the difficult things she had experienced in recent years. She wanted to scare her, perhaps to change her as well, because deep down she always loved her sister. She had therefore envisioned a ridiculous staging to convince her sister that the one who was suffering was herself. Probably thought that if Ayano understood, she would come back and everything could be as good as before. But what she didn't know was that Ayano had already asked her parents about that many times, but they had always been flatly opposed to it. There were only 2 years left of school before Ayano's graduation, and although at that time their parents were aware of the difficulties both sisters faced, they did not imagine that it could have gone so far. Probably blinded by their work, they were unable to understand what was best for their daughters. They thought they were doing well by pushing Ayano to get her diploma, but it was quite the opposite. Finally, Natsuko climbed up a tree, as she did when she and her sister were small, and put her plan into action. She selfishly explained her situation to Ayano, unable to understand that it was precisely her sister who was suffering the most. Ayano did not understand what Natsuko was saying. Ayano tried to explain the situation, to explain that she too wanted to return, that she had already tried to return. But Natsuko could not and did not want to hear anything. She was possessed by too many conflicting feelings. She was going crazy. Finally, in tears, she gave her sister an ultimatum. These words I heard from Ayano's mouth. Come home or I let myself fall. She was trembling, she was crying, she seemed to have no strength left. She was about to slip with every word she uttered. Ayano, more mature despite her young age, tried to control herself and calm the situation. She accepted her sister's request, promising that whatever their parents might say, she would do everything to return to live with her. She had just understood what had really happened in recent years, what her sister had experienced. She was ready to forgive all her mistakes, even those that had made her suffer. She explained the situation to her as best as she could. Natsuko would have been unable to jump, but her sister's words plunged her into even deeper grief. She must have felt stupid to have thought and acted that way for years, to have hurt her sister while she was the guiltier of the two. Ayano's voice finally managed to calm Natsuko. She promised her that they would have a family discussion so that things could be as they were before, and she would be on her side. Ayano had defused the time bomb taking away inside her sister for many years. But the story was probably already written. As she tried to regain her senses, weakened by all these emotions, Natsuko slipped from the branch on which she was perched. The fall took her life on the spot. Ayano took a few minutes to understand the seriousness of the situation. Help arrived quickly, but it was already too late. Nothing could have saved her from that. That was 2 years ago. This event has changed the Fujikawa family a lot. The parents have come to understand their mistakes and still find it very difficult to accept this tragic outcome. Ayano felt immediately responsible for this accident. She believed that none of this would have happened if she had not left. Of course, there was some truth in what she thought, and what she still thinks now, but that does not make her responsible for this tragedy. It is a regrettable chain of behavioral and psychological events that has spawned all this. Ayano is probably the least responsible of anybody in this story. Of course, she could not accept the death of her sister. She began by keeping her promise and left school, but this denial began to go much further. Unable to open her eyes and face reality, she used to go to the temple every day. It was not a bad habit in and of itself, but it was what she was doing there that would make her condition worse. She went there to talk to Natsuko. She, who was so rational, now found refuge in a one-way dialogue with her sister she seemed to see and who seemed to hear her and even answer her. Of course, all this was going on in her head. The voices she heard did not exist. She was slowly losing her mind. And one day, she stopped going there. She seemed to get better overnight. She even seemed to find a new appetite for life. But she was only keeping up appearances. It was about a year ago. I learned from her parents that she had found a cat in the temple. She seemed to believe that this cat was her sister, reincarnated. She started to spend most of her time with this animal. Natsuko had heterochromia, and I heard it was the same for the cat. That's probably what got this idea in her head. But the beast was at the end of its life, and sick too. She kept it for 3 or 4 months, and then it disappeared for good. Nobody had the strength to tell her, but the cat was found crushed on a road near the city. There was no doubt about it. The cat had 2 differently colored eyes. I was surprised to hear that. This did not coincide with what Ayano had told me. According to her, the cat had fled a few days ago. That was about 8 months ago. She looked for the cat for several days and seemed to give up. She even seemed to retain a taste for life for a few weeks, as much as can be expected, of course. And today I meet you and I hear that Ayano is still facing difficult times. I hadn't seen her for a long time, but I suspected that this period would be difficult for her. It's been almost 2 years since a tragic event. What can you tell me about the problems Ayano is currently facing? They are related to the story, are they not? Oh, thank God. Rio, you're talking! Woohoo! Hopefully it's more than one line of dialogue. I've been talking in Misaki's voice for what feels like half an hour. and my throat is not happy already. It's pretty strange, but Ayano is going through a difficult time because she claims to have lost her cat, which I've been looking for these last few days, and it seems to be the cat you described to me. Damn it, only one line. Ugh. Oh well. She did in fact lose it, but that was 8 months ago, and with what I just explained to you, you can well imagine that it will be difficult for you to find it. It was at this moment that I realized that it would have been impossible for me to not be mistaken as what, as I was. I understood that Ayano's fate was beyond anything I could have imagined. Rain, come on. Misaki's voice hasn't screwed with me that much, has it? Though, maybe it has. Everyone goes through tough times, but Ayano is very mentally unstable, and she blames herself for Natsuko's death. According to the latest news I had from her parents, it was not possible to treat her. Psychologists haven't found a solution. She simply doesn't want to admit what happened. I do not know how it would be possible to help her, but you're young, you'll find a way. If you really want to help her, don't leave her alone during this ordeal. Her trust in her parents is more than limited, and she is isolated and fragile. Don't take advantage of her situation either, but perhaps with a friend by her side listening to her might help. She is too often alone. She needs help in this ordeal. We all know that time will do the rest of the work, but it hurts me to see her in like this. I'll give you one last piece of advice. It's already late and my husband will get worried if I don't get back soon. I know Ayano well. I know how she thinks. Do not be discouraged if she doesn't come to you. She's like that. It's what she's become because of everything she's been through. You will have to be insistent to make her understand that she needs help and that you can support her. Hi, Luke. What this is me having fucking... Oh, God. Well, what this is, Luke, is me getting scared by the fucking notification sound, apparently. Actually physically jumped in my seat a little bit. So, I mean, there's that. And this is a kinetic novel, Luke. This is, what ended up getting, played on this past Thursday, instead of Hitman, because download time was too long. So, yeah. But Hitman is downloaded now for this Thursday. That was the change of plans. But kinetic novel, yeah. We're roughly halfway through. Roughly halfway through, I would say. Yes, I did, Luke. This is a game that I actually helped out with verifying the English translation, and actually on that, a little brief quietness a moment ago. I don't know if you're actually on stream yet or not. It was because of little oddity in text there that I was sending in to the author to get another update. I sent some issues last Thursday to get fixed, and he had fixed them like the same day, within 24 hours, really. But alright, back to reading for at least a few more minutes before I take a voice break. I feel that you are a good person. I do not know why. Experience, maybe. I really feel like you can help her. If you can, please do. She really deserves it. This is a really terrible story. I don't know what to say. Thank you for telling me. I'm sure it will help me a lot. You can count on me. I'll do my best to support her. That's nice to hear. It's time for me to leave. If you need me, you know where to find me. Good luck, young man. Oh, thank God, I'm done with her voice for now. The situation was now perfectly clear. I was going to have to help her accept her sister's passing, convince her that she was not responsible for it, while making her understand that she needed my help to get through all of this. This was a little different than looking for a cat. Still could not believe how I could have been so wrong. I was ashamed. I was finally facing my first real situation as an Esper, but I really did not know where to start. I did not know if I could still meet Ayano at the cemetery, and if not, I still don't know how I was going to find her. Did I know how I was going to get her to rely on me to make her understand that I would be able to help her. And I did not really know how I was going to be able to talk about it with her either. Brain, stop adding words. I was back to the starting point. But what I was sure of was that I was finally on the right track for my exam, and I was more than motivated to help Ayano. Now that I knew what her past was, I could not leave her alone. It was impossible. Made my way back home thinking about this all along the way. You know what? Here's a good time to take a voice break.